All right. Well, for this episode of Creation and Compost, I thought it would be really fun to bring on a group of guys who I have come to really enjoy listening to as they have started a podcast. I believe it was year before last. Was it 2020 when you guys got going? Oh, 2020.
Right.
Okay.
20. Yep.
During COVID. So this is a
Yes,
COVID.
we started it like what?
Like the week
Literally right at. So
Yeah. Well, listen, I want to introduce my guests for this week. We have the Messer Brothers podcast. We have Craig, Nick, and their brains behind the operation, Mr. Doug Chambers, the man with the plan. So I'm very thankful. Welcome, guys.
Thank you for having us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Absolutely.
This is our first crossover.
Yeah.
Well, listen, the way I look at it is we all have to stick together in this. For me, it's a brand new endeavor, but I have learned a lot from you guys just listening. And whenever we were still down in Canton serving with you guys at Riverside Baptist. So, like I said, y'all are kind of like role models to me in this regard. So I'm definitely modeling parts of my show after the Messer brothers. So,
that means a lot. I appreciate that.
But seriously, you guys are an inspiration because I can tell, and I want you to kind of start out by just talking about why you wanted to start a podcast. And then I want to ask you some specific questions about, the themes that you guys cover. So I'm gonna go ahead and let you guys just kind of introduce yourselves, but also what your podcast covers, because I just find it very fascinating.
Okay. You want to go first?
You go ahead.
Okay, I figured. I'm Craig Messer. I guess I came to Nick and Doug about starting a podcast. I've been listening to podcasts, I don't know, probably for a year. That's probably a good estimate. And I thought, I can do this. Everybody was talking about interesting stuff. There had been one that come out, and it was called Mountain Murders, that was local, and that really got me thinking. There's a lot of stories that are local that can be covered. So just listening to other people, and I got the idea because this stuff that I've always been interested in, and I got a lot to say. I've got opinions on everything. We do not go into probably my two favorite topics, religious things and politics, but it's hard to keep it. Like we say, we don't go into it, but I think we probably do, because you can't talk about some of these topics and not get into that. It's hard, but it's hard to hide who you are, I guess, is a thing, because we'll talk about Christmas, and what's Christmas really about? It's hard not to talk about why you like Christmas. So, and different aspects. It's definitely been delved into. So I actually took off our description the other day that we don't talk about politics and religion, because
I noticed that.
Yeah, because it's going to be talked about, and I'm okay with that. It's not the main subject, I guess, of the podcast, because we're trying to give people mainly a break from politics. I mean, you don't need a break from Christ, but I think it automatically has to come up if that's something in your life, and it does. So, but yeah, we started it. We cranked out a ton there at the beginning because everything was shut down. There was only so many places you could go. I mean, Nick didn't go to work for how long?
I went to work the whole time.
I thought they had a certain amount of time you couldn't go.
No, I was there always.
Well, he was there, but his schedule changed, so he was a lot more open and free to do what he wanted.
Yeah.
I didn't go in the office for, I don't know, 3 or 4 months easily. So everything was working from home, which everybody knows this, but it's a lot easier to get together at that time and crank out a ton of them. And we did. And then it got tougher, but we've kind of got back into it. We've got his schedule's changed some, and it's we're able to at least try, on a regular basis to get things cranking out. And then we had a few, quite a few that was just me and Doug. And a lot of people are shocked. They're like, Doug's really talking on that. And I'm like, yeah, he talks to us. And I think that was a cool thing for some people to experience, because they got to see more of Doug. So
yeah,
I knew I was a talker. at least hear Doug. Yeah. Oh,
Well,
you see. Yay.
yeah. Well, and I like that too, because it's almost like, you're pulling from behind the curtain, somebody who's actively engaged in the show, you just don't
Right.
hear them speak. And I think that brings a whole nother element to the show personally.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think me and Nick being brothers, we have maybe a lot more similar ideas on some things, or like when we do our list of top favorite things, Doug brings an outside perspective to that sometimes, because me and Nick automatically like a lot of the same things because it's what we did as a family growing up. So I think that's interesting too, to have that idea in there, or that, different voice. So
Absolutely.
All right. Well, that was Craig. So I'm Nick. I'm the other Messer brother. Let's see. Craig came to me. It was Sunday after church, and he's like, "I think I'm going to start a podcast. You want to do it with me?" I was like, "Yeah, sounds fun." Then he told me what it was going to be about, and I was like, "Cause it's like the themes of it was always Craig's thing. I was always into other stuff, but I thought, yeah, I'll go along with it just because it's probably be fun, and it's been a lot of fun."
Yeah.
And then some of the people I work with that I changed jobs since then, but they started listening to it, and they're like, "I heard you talk more on the podcast than I've heard you work, or since you've been working here for like 2 years." I was like, well, and then they said they loved it, and we just kept doing it. I've had a good time doing it.
Well, and I'll tell you one thing, Nick, is, when we went to church at Riverside, we were there for, 3.5, almost 4 years. And you and I really, most of the talking you and I did, it was really just, "Hey, how you doing? Good to see you."
Yeah.
We talked a few times, but I've learned more about you just listening to the show and hearing a lot of your personality come out. And I really think that you guys complement each other very well, because, typically Craig is going to, as he mentioned, he doesn't have a problem talking. And then you're a lot more reserved. But I think that the things that you contribute to your personalities go really well together when you're on the mic together.
And I love episodes where like somebody else takes the lead, and I kind of get to just add my own thing. Like, I love being the lead, don't get me wrong, but I think it's fun to hear somebody else explain something and me get to just jump in and add stuff.
It was kind of like, with Brooks and Dunn for so many years. It's like, Ronnie Dunn is going to be the lead in every single song, and then all of a sudden Kix Brooks comes out and it sounds like a completely different group. I'm like, but no, it really does. It adds a whole nother element. And like I said, I think you guys work well together. And of course, Doug, it's been good to hear your voice on some recent episodes as well. So,
yeah.
And when we were kids, Craig was always real loud, and I never really had a chance to speak. So I just became more of the observer.
That's what he tells everybody.
I just sit back and watch what's going on, and it's just stuck with me forever.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it works really well. Y'all do a good job. So kind of transitioning into that, I'd like for you guys to share a little bit about the things that you do cover, because, just going through your archives, I guess I was kind of amazed at the amount of variety that you guys offer with like the titles. Just talk a little bit about like what your initial podcasts were about, and then maybe some of the kind of how that's grown over the last year and a half or so since you guys started doing this.
Yeah, so we started out, the podcast I'd been listening to and everything was basically mystery type things. A lot of like people that were murdered or disappeared and nobody knew where they were. So we started out, and I've always been interested. I mean, since birth, I can remember watching Unsolved Mysteries on TV from, I don't even know, like, that's just something I remember. And I don't even know, like, I don't remember it not being on or around, because that was a Tay-Day when I was a little kid. And I've just got these distinct memories of being at either side of my grandparents, either mom's side or dad's, and watching it at both places, and at home. I mean, and then when I got a little older and you'd be out from summer break on Lifetime, every day when I'd eat lunch about 12 o'clock, they would have it on. So I'd eat lunch and watch Unsolved Mysteries. And if nobody else wanted to, I had to go in another room and watch it by myself, which was fine. But then it would freak me out. And I'd watch it in my parents' room, and I was convinced that out of their bathroom, this person was hiding. So I spent that hour kind of scared, kind of excited, but so that's the kind of thing I wanted to try to replicate, I guess, in a sense. And Unsolved Mystery wasn't all about the murder or the crime. They did a lot of, say they talked about Bigfoot, they talked about legends, and I wanted to be kind of about that. But I feel like our first few was really on that. And then we got into we made up stories a couple times, and that's fun. Like we literally came in, sat down, and I started telling a story, and then Nick took a turn telling a story and adding it to it. We had no idea where it was going to go. Kind of cool. So, and then we did a 3-part JFK. Probably wouldn't do a 3-parter again. It got hard. Started out on fire. I felt like this is going to be great, and then it's just that's a lot. To keep it all concise together was tough.
That was my least favorite.
And Nick hates it. He wishes we would have never touched that.
Yeah.
And we could, if I had it to do over again, I would have done it in one episode and just hit major points and not worried about the weeds, because there's so many weeds with something like that. It's not even funny.
Oh, yeah.
So then we get into, I love our top 10 or top 5 list. And that was a newer edition. We didn't start out doing that. And I love that, because we've spent episodes just talking about that. And I think you get to really see our opinions on things. And then our banter is really good on stuff like that, I think. So I enjoy that. And then, sometimes we just talk about whatever, and it's fun. We have an episode. Hopefully we're recording it next week. I'm not going to say too much about it yet, because it's not nailed down completely, but it could be I'm going to say celebrity. To me, it's a celebrity. And I mean, they've been on TV. I mean, they were on a pretty well-known TV show, and I contacted this person, and we're in communications, and hopefully we're going to get them on. And I'm super excited, and who knows how that episode will go, but it's going to be,
we're hoping it goes well.
We're hoping it goes well. Yeah. Cause that could open up, I don't know.
It's probably a good thing we got this Zoom thing figured out today.
Yeah. Cause he wants to do Zoom. That's his method. So this is a very good dry run of us trying to figure out Zoom. So
yeah, well, and I tell you, just being new to this whole thing, I've learned a lot from a guy on YouTube. You may have heard of him. His name's Pat Flynn, and he's a very well-known personality that teaches people how to do podcast and I'm sorry, what'd you say?
I just said okay. Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. He's really good about just walking you through almost like the cliff notes. Like for me, I needed a dummy version, and I really do believe he had in the notes, this is for Matt Bracewell. I'm going to spell it out for you. But just some of the things to think about. And so I decided to do Zoom because I could get the recording, but it also uploads the audio file so that I can use it in both programs. So the audio that gets converted, I can use it with Audacity, and then the video I can use with the script or, whatever I choose to do.
Yeah.
And then that way you're building either clips or content for a YouTube channel, which of course we have 2, one that we really only post 2. So I'm learning as I go too. I'm trying to say, what can we do to give people the full experience? So what you guys record on, what I do on the podcast, it might only be 20 minutes, but then if we talk for 45 minutes, people can really learn a lot more about you guys. They can see you, and then that way they maybe get a more, more full experience with the conversation that we had. They can, even though it'll be slightly edited, they can see some of the imperfections. They can see some of the goofs. Not all of them, but at least to have the experience of feeling like they were in the studio, so to speak. So
yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
But anyways, so here's something I really want to kind of get at, and again, I think the ghost story, everybody has their own ghost story growing up. Everybody has a moment when they were scared or there was some mystery. For us at our elementary school in South Georgia, we had an auditorium that had a crawl space, and there was the legend of the Goat Man. And the Goat Man was, this figure that if you went down underneath the auditorium, you would not come out, because you literally, even on the brightest of days with the sun shining directly into that hole, it was like a black hole in space. You saw nothing. So everybody has their, mystery. We all came up with our own versions of, why he became the goat man, all of the kids he devoured, and all those other crazy things. But I guess, what are some other shows that you enjoyed watching growing up, or maybe movies, in addition to Unsolved Mysteries? Because we all hear that music, we all see the creepy face, we all know that you don't watch that show at night, although I never remember watching it during the day ever. It was always at night. So what are some other shows and movies that really kind of, that you automatically went to when you started thinking about this whole unsolved mystery, and different legends theme?
You go first. Let somebody else talk.
I really don't know.
Okay, I'll go first.
Do you have something?
Yeah. Are You Afraid of the Dark?
I was thinking that.
That show was like, and that, you're of the age that was probably real big for you
absolutely.
too.
Yep.
And we, we're a little younger, but that show was just, I love it. Absolutely loved it as a kid. And then Goosebumps.
Yes, sir.
That was big too. My parents got into watching Forensic Files.
Yeah, I hated that.
And did it scare you?
It scared me.
It scared me bad because that was always at night. So we went to bed at 9:00 and we would watch it at like 8:30, and then we'd go to bed. And I couldn't sleep. It was rough.
I could imagine.
That was rough. Let's see. Is there really? I'm trying to think.
America's Most Wanted.
Yeah, so we watched that a little bit, but not as much. It bothered me more than Unsolved Mysteries.
Yeah, it did.
We watched. I remember one time in particular, we were at my mom's parents, and they had it on Unsolved Mysteries, and it was. I mean, it was freaking me out. Like the guy was hiding in the washer and dryer or something, and they came home. There he was. He killed the people. I was like, I was like, I think 7 or 8. And I told my grandpa, I was like, that scares me. And he was like, scares you? He's like, you got to learn stuff like this. He's like, this is real life. He's like, you're going to know murderers one day. And I was like, I am? Like, I don't know. And the next morning, he was like, I'm sorry. He's like, I was a little rough. He said, I know it probably scared you. He said, I shouldn't have acted like that. My mom was like, boy, he must really feel bad. He's never apologized to me. And so, things like that.
That book.
What book?
That one with we did one of the stories out of it. The old lady disappeared.
Oh, yes. Yeah. That's a good one. There is a book that's written. I've read it like 3 times.
You used to get it from
I got it from the library all the time. And it's probably like middle school age, I guess. Unsolved Disappearances in the Smoky Mountains. And that book, that actually is a big thing. And it had all these stories that were local, I mean, they might be from right over across the mountain in Tennessee, but to me, it was local. And to see there's stuff like that right here, not just all around the country or in the world, but that stuff like that happens here. And I mean, it was some crazy cases. And the very first case we covered on the show was in that book. And then another case that's one of my favorite ones we covered was about William Bishop.
Bradford.
Yeah, William Bishop Bradford. Bradford Bishop. I always say it backwards. And he was in that book and literally walked into the Smokies, and nobody knows like what happened after that. But the FBI come out a few years ago and said they believe he's still alive.
Oh, wow. And
I'm like, that's just crazy. Like, and it was right here in our backyard. So that, those things kind of molded that, I guess, in a sense.
Yeah, I remember too a show that we watched, Rescue 911, and that was a show that used to come on. I think it came on Tuesday, and then didn't Unsolved Mystery? Didn't it come on Wednesday? Maybe
I think.
Yeah, something like. Yeah. It's. I mean, I have slept since then, but I tell you.
What was Rescue 911 like that in the same mold?
Well, a lot of it was Rescue 911. A lot of it was people that actually had, because they were trying to encourage people to call 911 whenever there was an emergency. Okay. Don't just call the local sheriff's department or police station to call 911. but it was documenting cases where people's lives were saved as a result of calling 911.
That's cool.
And then, of course, there was an element of mystery to it. Sometimes where they would throw in the forensics part, and of course, now with what we've learned, with the Human Genome Project over the last 30 to 40 years, and the more we've learned about DNA forensic tests, of course, we know people who've been convicted and have been executed, and it was found out later that they were actually wrongly accused and they should still be alive. There are those unfortunate cases. So science itself, biological sciences they really have progressed a lot to the point to where a lot of those shows that we watched, it would really be interesting to go back and see how many of those cases and those mysteries where people died, if they were able to find those people that committed it, to see just how many of them would be innocent or guilty for the ones that they did find.
That could be a TV show in itself.
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you too, for us in South Georgia, we had a similar instance. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the All Day Murder Massacre. It was a family down in Seminole County, and I was born in Seminole, but I lived in Miller, and it was back in the 70s, and it was a family of farmers, and there were some people that escaped from up in the Northeast, and I believe it was Henry Thomas, and the last names were Wilders. But anyways, they broke out. They went on this long multi-state rampage of robbing people, essentially getting everything they needed to escape. And they stopped at this random little bitty farm out in the middle of South Georgia, 8,000 people in the whole county. They just happened to come up on this house, and one after another, they murdered 5 or 6 family members within the course of that afternoon. And it was, I've never watched the movie. The movie's called Murder One. It still gives me chills even just talking about it, but they've written books and they've done all kind of stuff. And that was something that once I heard about that, being from that area, it really sobered me to the fact that a lot of these mysteries and these things that go unsolved, it was really a blessing that they eventually caught those people, because there are so many other instances like you guys have talked about where there's that there's that element of, well, they might still be alive, and that's the part that, it kind of gives this eerie feeling, and kind of makes you uneasy. But it also, to me, it just helps me become more vigilant in, protecting my home, protecting my wife and kids, and, just always making sure that, that I'm ready for any situation that I can avoid happening.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to have to look that story up. That's,
oh man, I have not,
sounds very sad.
It is. And I'll be 40 this year, and I'm telling you, I still do not think I can watch that movie, because I knew a few All Days. I don't think they were direct relation. They might've been more distant, but because it happened literally 12 to 15 miles from my childhood home, like 10 years before I was born, maybe, it's still, when I went by that area one time where that occurred, and there was just this sense of unrest. It was just like an eerie feeling. I mean, this happened 30 something years afterwards, or before that I went by, and it's just this sense of mystique. And like I said, just unease. So if you can handle it, it is pretty graphic. It's I'm gonna be honest with you, it's on the lines of the Sharon Tate murder with Charles Manson's cult. It's and the fact that happened so close to where I grew up, like I said, it really just makes your heart go out in these situations when this kind of stuff happens. So
makes it real.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, being right there, it's real.
Absolutely. So I guess, now that I've gotten everybody sad and depressed, that's not what I was going for, but I did want to at least bring up that sense of, we all have a story, and we all have something that, I think that's part of why I really grew close to what you guys were doing, and was like, man, it's just neat. It's neat to hear about these things. And like you said, in the mountains, we lived there for 4 years with you guys in the same county. And there is this element of, just because I can't think of another word, mystique in living in Western North Carolina.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, so Dad's family's from here. Mom's family is from Eastern Kentucky. And I can say it's in both places. Like, I get maybe it's just the Appalachian region in general, but there's just something mysterious and just kind of almost unknown, I guess, in a sense, because things happen. You got a lot of legends. We've covered some on the show of just different things. Like you look at something as simple as the road to nowhere in Swain County, and it's like, the story is they just quit. The government just quit building the road to the parkway. That's it. But then you look at like what happened. You know what I mean? And it's like, what really happened? Was it a witch from Cherokee that come over there and scared these guys to death, and so they quit? And she left her mark on these people and these children. Like, it's just, and it may just be full of nothing, but it's fun. It's fun at the same time, to me anyway, stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff. Like I said, there's a Mountain Murders podcast, and I'd listen to it, and they're still going like 4 years later, and all the stories are from, within a pretty close driving distance. And it's crazy. I mean, of our own lifetime, you were speaking about the murders in South Georgia. There was the Phillips family?
Yeah.
The Phillips family was murdered here. We were kids. I don't know how old I was, not too old, but I can remember it was just two people. They pulled off the interstate and happened to be these people's house, and they killed them all.
Fines Creek.
Down towards Fines Creek, I believe.
They catch you killed them?
Yeah. They were both executed. But you got that, and then there's stories of around the 70s of these murders, and Asheville has an insane amount of history that's just people don't really talk about it. We did a ghost tour in Asheville, and it's like every single building seems to have a story of some sort of
several murders over on the National Forest.
Yeah. Oh, I got a story for you. So our dad used to do a lot of stuff over. He was a supplier to this company that made, like the artificial trees people have for decoration in their house. So he was a big company out of Hickory that made those. He was a supplier to them of like the sticks that they use for these trees. Well, he got all that off the government. Had to get a permit and all that good stuff. Well, there's a road if you go on 276 between Crusoe and Brevard. It's called Yellow Gap Road, and he, every day was in that area pretty much. And he had passed this car like 3-4 days straight and thought, they're really back there camping, because a lot of people do that. And one day he come back through there and there was cops. And turns out those people were missing that had been in that car, and he was cutting he was right down below there. They found the woman's body not far from the car. It was an older couple. The husband's body, they didn't find for a long time, but I believe he was found further down. And then their credit card was used in Georgia, and they had the footage of the man. And I actually saw a TV thing about this. He had been killing people like just randomly all around.
I think he killed like 10
people. It was quite a few people. And he just happened to come upon these people. They were there hiking, like they were there to enjoy the outdoors, and he came across them and killed them, took their stuff. My dad's like, I'm in there every day.
Yeah.
And so me and Nick, we cut some firewood over there, and
it's creepy.
It is creepy.
There just be weird cars that
you would see like
blacked out windows with rings.
Yeah, like there's no telling what's going on down through there.
Oh my goodness.
Some other story, from back there's tons of murders that happen on over there too. I mean, I know that they found a body one time, no way to identify them, like at all, and it's still unsolved. But beyond that, you've got the Cherokee and all their legends, and the early pioneers, I guess, in a sense, that came here. I don't know if you would call them pioneers, but our family that's from here, our first ancestor to Western North Carolina fought in the Revolutionary War and came to Cataloochee. And so I would love, I don't know if there's a ton of stories of this type of stuff for that area. I've not heard of any, but it would be interesting to be able to find some. So.
Oh yeah. Well, and I'm sure people, especially people who are native to like Haywood County, I've only been while I was there, I only went to Fines Creek just a couple of, just a handful of times.
Yeah.
And even a place like that, as you mentioned there's so much, when you go through there and it's so secluded in some of those higher elevations.
Yeah.
And there is a level of, especially when you're driving at night and you see those beautiful mountains with a few homes here and there. And then you realize just how many people are tucked up in those hills and those hollers. And, it really is, there's just a whole nother element of wonder that comes through your mind, is like all of the history that will never, aside from being passed down from families privately, the things that have happened that government agencies and record, history books will never have record of. So that's something for me that's interesting too. And but I do want to ask you, as far as I understand, you guys took a recent trip on a little ghost hunt, and I was wanting to see if maybe you felt like sharing a little bit of that experience, because all I saw on Facebook, I said, man, we timed this perfectly. Like maybe they can share a little bit of what they just found out.
Yeah, we did. I got into ghost tours. Let's see.
We did the first one in
Savannah, Georgia was the first one we did, and I loved it. I just thought it was fantastic. So everywhere I go, I try, if there's one available, I try to do it, because it's a good way, to at least learn the history of the place you're visiting, because they're all obviously historical. And we did Gatlinburg this past Saturday, and it was good. Creepy stuff. We didn't see anything. We've got a lot of pictures. I looked through them and I don't see anything on there. Sometimes you will. I mean, sometimes the one from Savannah, I've got a full-on picture of, looks like a ghost in a dress, and she wasn't there in person. It's weird. But this one, he just talked about some stories from there, and I can't imagine how much more there is to that area, because you hear all sorts of stuff, especially with Cades Cove being right there, and the government pretty much forcing those people off their land, really the whole Smokies. I mean, there's no telling what all happened through there.
Yeah. One of the stories he told was about a guy who didn't want to leave his place when the government came to take it. So that's just one story we know of. I'm sure there's a whole bunch of other ones where people were killed and nobody even knows they existed.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, and we took a tour back in May of last year. We were in Charleston, and we took, Brianna and I, we took all the kids, and we told them, we're like, there's nothing to be scared of. We're just going to walk through. There are going to be some dark places on the path, but most of everything that we see is going to be well lit. There'll be plenty of people around. It was like 10 o'clock at night, 10:15, and our kids were just troopers. You're talking about 4 kids under the age of 9 at that time, and they did a really good job, aside from Merritt wanting to be picked up and carried. But for everything else, I mean, it really was enlightening, because it taught you a lot about the history of like you said, it really gave you an idea of how things ran with certain businesses. It wasn't so much like we were personally going to look for ghosts. We just love history, and we enjoy good stories. So we told the kids, like, nothing to be scared of. We're here. But if you enjoy a good story, you enjoy finding out about a place that might be new to you, that you're not native to. I encourage a lot of people, just, for the entertainment value, just walking and hearing the way they share those stories. And, of course, on this podcast, I know I have a lot of listeners who are younger, and of course I have some parents, who might, kind of frown upon us talking about ghosts or whatever. But I always want to make sure that I let people understand that, when we do talk about ghosts or the supernatural, that there are 2 main types of spirits that do exist in our reality. And people ask me a lot. They, when I was in the public school, they'd say, "Do you believe in ghosts?" Because it always comes up. Do you believe in aliens? Do you believe in this? And I said, well, of course I do. And they're like, really? I'm like, well, I believe in the Holy Ghost. I said, I'm a Christian, and I believe that when you're saved, you're filled with the Holy Ghost comes upon you, and you are indwelt by that Holy Ghost for the rest of your life, and that you pray that you'll be filled so that you can, act in the Spirit and you can bless others in Jesus' name. I said, but there are very real spirits out there that are the opposite. And I said, we need to understand that as a Christian, we can't be possessed by those spirits, but we need to be very, very real that people who have not come to that saving grace, that saving knowledge, if they entertain those spirits, they can very well be given over to the supernatural. So Absolutely. I said, it is important to understand the history and the context, of our country and the way that people have passed stories down. More than anything, it's just good to learn about the different things that have happened and understand. And like I said, show grace towards, some of these unsolved murders or people who were not brought to justice, and to reassure people that even if they weren't brought to justice, that God is the ultimate judge, and he says that he will repay that vengeance that we seek out so often. So I think there's a real big spiritual application in what you guys are doing as well.
100%. Like one of our other buddies, I'm not going to say his name because he may not want his name mentioned right now. But anyway, he is a pastor, and he went with us on the ghost tour. And we were talking because, a lot of people are surprised if they hear that a preacher or a pastor believes it or would even dream of going on something like that. But, it's some friends getting together and having a good time because it is fun. But he said, and I believe this, he said a lot of these stories, and I think everyone in Gatlinburg was this way for sure, and most of them that you're going to go and hear are involved with some crime or some murder or some really horrible act. And that is why there is this, whatever this is, people see. And they're, the ghost story, the person that takes you around, they usually say, oh yeah, they have unfinished business. They were taken in such a way. They're trying to figure out how to cross over. And I'm like, yeah, that's bull. Like, that's not, we're not entertaining that even as a thought. Yeah, this story, the guy said that this lady was left at the altar and she came back as a mountain lion and killed her former fiance. Probably not. But anyway, this guy said, and I've thought about this before, that there were such violent and evil acts performed at these places that, it's a spiritual aspect. There was possibly some demonic presence in these crimes, and maybe that demonic presence is still there in that area.
Yeah.
And I think it's got to be anybody that sees a ghost, they're literally seeing, you're not seeing your great grandmother. I hate to break it to you. You are seeing, if you're seeing something, it is of a spiritual nature. Because there's, if they say, if you could see what's going on with the demons around you, you'd be shocked. It'd scare you to death. Yeah. And the spiritual warfare is real. And I definitely think that's one reason, I'm not going to be messing with an Ouija board, because
come on,
I believe that you can open something up to literally letting these demonic things in.
I agree.
I mean, I don't question that.
Yeah.
I don't think we fully understand it, but I think it is of a spiritual nature. It's got to be. That's the only way it can actually exist.
Oh, absolutely. And, you're talking about, I always wondered as a kid, when we would see it on TV and they'd advertise it just as this little kid's toy, just almost like a puzzle or something, like a regular board game. And, like amaze your friends with the ability to move without action, and I'm like, as I got older, I was like, wow, that's actually really, really creepy, that you would entertain that, and, people would be encouraged to do that. But, people have made their livings off of reading palms and reading astrological charts. And we were actually having that conversation last week in biology or environmental science. We're talking about the weather and climate. And, these are juniors and seniors. And I was like, you don't have to raise your hand, but how many of you have ever read your zodiac sign? And half of them kind of smiled, and I'm like, I'm a Gemini, and I might have read my sign or whatever, my horoscope maybe twice in my whole life just for entertainment value. But, I'm like, something as simple as that, people, if not using it for the right way, they can become so obsessed with it. I said,
Yeah.
but, you know, as far as understanding the difference, I said, you know, I firmly believe that, you know, things with ghost and the unknown, I'm like, you know, there's a lot of things I truly believe God wants us to seek out, because he's called a lot of people into things like forensic science, detective work. And unfortunately, that is part of their job. They do have to go a certain level of almost recreating and envisioning what the scene was like. And sometimes that does involve having to kind of go outside of what in a Christian circle we may say is, well, that's demonic. Well, they kind of, in a way, they're only left with so many options of having to go to that place and really feel the situation out and almost ask for those, you know, I don't want to be sacrilegious, but almost ask for those spirits to give them an answer, because sometimes it's a cold case and they can't come up with any answers. So they're probably almost subconsciously saying, I just wish I could get a sign. I just wish there was something that would show me, you know, what happened. So
And I mean, you know, going into like you know, talking about people reading palms, and sometimes psychics help police solve cases. Do I understand that? No, but I know it, you know, I'm not going to mess with that. No. You know, but it's just, it's interesting. There's a lot there that we don't fully understand and probably don't want to understand.
So, you know, obviously, you know, you were correct, and I was as well, that we could probably talk for hours and hours and hours.
How long has it been?
So, yo, I'm telling you, man, I do too. But a couple of things I want to finish out with as we're kind of coming kind of to a closing point here in our time together. First and foremost, you've already shared one of the answers to the questions. You were talking about upcoming projects, and you kind of gave us a little teaser there, so I'm not going to press you on that. Yeah. But I guess if I wanted to ask, where do you foresee this podcast going within this next year? Things that you can talk about. What are some things that you would really be interested in doing, and maybe expanding the themes that you maybe are just considering? Well, I don't know. What are some other things that you'd like to see this podcast, kind of some other places you'd like to see this go?
Do you want to answer that?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I'm wanting to make it into like a production company. I want to start doing documentaries. We got Doug here. He's a video man. He's good at it. And we've got one documentary lined up. We've got some people. We told them we want to make a documentary about it. They said they like it. So we've got it planned. We got to get it started here within the next few weeks. So awesome. We're hoping by the end of the year to have a documentary out. A Messer Brothers Presents documentary.
Yeah. And it is not about
it's not about
this type of stuff. It's something
branch out of this kind of.
Yeah, it's something that's I think it would be enjoyable on many levels. It'd be very, very interesting story.
Yeah, we were sitting here and trying to decide what to do it on, and Craig was like, well, if we were scrolling through Netflix and I saw something like this, I'd probably stop and watch it. Yeah. You know what? I would too. So we figured out a way to get it done.
We have we've talked about a very large documentary that we want to do. If this is not it, we're definitely doing this one first, but our hope is to build up to something. We've got a big one in our heads that we want to one day see. Mm-hmm. And it's not this either.
Okay.
But it's, you know, it can be good. So
yeah. Well, and I'll tell you, documentaries can be so powerful, even if you don't have a big budget. If you're thinking big time message with small resources or however, some of the most impactful ones that I have, you know, had the opportunity to watch and really be impacted by have been ones started up by a group like yourself. You know, you just have an idea, you go with it. You may get funding, you may not. You may have to put up some of your own money. I tell you, it's weird because we all have different interests, but one that I love, and it's been out for 7 or 8 years. I'm a big retro video game fan. So like, I love the old systems of the 80s and 90s. I can't believe we're saying 80s and 90s. It's like, you know, but like I grew up with an Atari and an 8-bit Nintendo, and that was like, those were like a big deal back in their day. And so one of the best documentaries I ever watched was Nintendo Quest. And it was a group of guys in Canada. They wanted to travel the United States and just collect every every North American released 8-bit Nintendo game, and it was 678 of them, and it was an hour and a half, and they had a very modest budget, but they got some funding from other people. They sold it at they sold the idea to a lot of people. They had a lot of buy-in, and so something as simple as that just caught my interest, and I've watched it probably 36 times. Just when I'd have other things going on, I'd have it playing in the background, because they play all the retro games in the background. You hear the music, and it's like nostalgia overload for a kid of the 80s and the 90s. So, even something as simple as that, it's amazing how that can be used to impact people, maybe in ways that you didn't even realize, because that particular documentary got such a cult following of people that they were literally going all over the country, and they had people that were just like, and I know it sounds silly for video games to change people's lives, but that was an integral part of their childhood. And I know for me, when I would go through things that were difficult as a kid, I thought, man, let me just go play my video game and it'll help me escape. Yeah. And that documentary did that. So I really believe that if it's something you're passionate about, it's a long way of telling you, go with it, because you'll change somebody's heart in a way that if it means a lot to you, it'll have a bigger impact than what you realize. So I look forward to seeing what you guys come up with.
Cool. Well, appreciate it. I think you would definitely like the one we're talking about. So.
Okay. Well, again, I'm not gonna prod. I'm not gonna pry. So even though I grew up on South Georgia and cow prods were a part of the job. So so last question. How can people get in touch with you guys? And what are some ways people can stay in contact with you?
What's our email, Nick?
Our email is themesserbrothers@gmail.com.
We take any questions. Yeah. Our podcast is on every system pretty much. Spotify, Apple, and then Anchor is our host, and you can find it on their website as well.
And do we have a Facebook still?
We do. We have a Facebook page as well. Messer Brothers Presents. And you'll see our little crow. Our little crow is our symbol. So,
okay. And if it's okay, I've already done this. So if I do not have permission, please let me know. But I have already put on our website, creationandcompost.com, under Friends of CNC. I've actually inserted a link directly to your podcast.
Awesome.
And I would also go back, and if you'd like me to, I can provide a link for the email, so that if somebody does want to access through our website, they can find out more about the show, can email you with those questions, and just a way that we can help promote you guys. And if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Please do it.
Awesome. Hey, listen, guys, I appreciate your time, your patience. This has been a ton of fun. I hope we can do more of these, just because, it's just good to see you guys. And proud of the work you're doing. And if there's anything we can do to be a support, please let us know. And we'll look forward to talking to you guys again soon.
Awesome. Good deal. Thanks, Matt.
Hey, thank you guys. Y'all take care.